Badlands Amphitheater. They had 200 tickets sold out, and it was an incredible event. So thank you to all of the volunteers and Vance and his team. That was a lot of fun. So I will call this meeting to order, and can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of September 14th? Lisa, second. Tom, comments? All in favor? Carried. Tom, I got to look that way today. Can I get a motion to adopt the August 31st, 2020 regular council minutes as presented? Lisa, Christine, comments? All in favor? Carried. And now I'd like to move on to 5.1.1, the Municipal Development Plan, Bylaw 17.20 Amendment, first reading. So Darwin, and welcome, and Andrew from O2, welcome you both to, and I assume you guys are giving the update on it all. Looking forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Gives me great pleasure to be here tonight to hit this milestone. We've pushed hard and fast to get here. There's two issues here for first reading under the bylaws section on the agenda under CAO Darrell. I want to give a bit of the background on both, and then we'll do a conjoint presentation that Andrew will carry through, and then back to the floor, I guess, for consideration and hopefully passage of first reading. So both the Municipal Development Plan and the Land Use Bylaw were a major first step in calibrating how and what we would do with the rest of the valley with regard to flood mitigation. So as we've heard many times, we can stop building in the river. And as such, we needed to look at reassembling or assembling a how-to manual. And the discussions that we had very early in the year were that we would create an overarching document that would help guide everything from recreation, economic development, land use, engineering standards through the provision of a new municipal development plan. With that, and at the same time, rather than sequentially as is often done, we decided that the land use bylaw should be reviewed at that time as well, again for the impacts of the master design that we were putting together for the flood mitigation program. It turned out in both instances that major overhaul could be done to both documents, but it would be more efficient if we simply started anew. And with that, assembled a great many people on steering committees, technical committees, Palliser Regional Planning, and of course engaging our consultants, O2 Design and Consulting of Calgary. So what is attached in your packages? You've seen both the land use bylaw and the MDP as links on your agenda packages, and we have published packages, and they are on the town website. And we also have a PowerPoint presentation that we'll get to here immediately. What we've looked at with regard to being a flood community is that just as in Bill 8, which is the Emergency Management Act for Alberta, it requires that we consider people, property, environment, and the economy in everything we do in the response in a state of emergency or state of local emergency. We made our focus areas for the flood program to, firstly, communication and engagement. Secondly, the regulatory and approvals, which this discussion falls under. Conveyance capacity. A lot of effort has to go into what and how much water we can move up and down the Red Deer River, and Rosebud. And then structural measures. What would we have to put at the interface between the homes and the river to make it safe, de-risk it, and protect communities so they can continue to get mortgages, so they can continue to get insurance, and that they can live safely. And then finally, how do we up our emergency management plan to ensure that we're on our toes, but also so that we don't have to build enormous, ridiculous-sized dikes. We can actually add to them with a properly orchestrated emergency response plan. So work will have to be done on that. So our success is that the residents have confidence. We've decreased the vulnerability. We increase economic activity either through the work we're doing or by enabling legislation. We increase the capacity of the Red Deer River to flow through Drumheller, and by Drumheller we mean Nakmine to East Cooley and all the neighborhoods within. We improve climate adaptation by putting measures in place such as trees, carbon sequestration, cooling areas, and more activities on the river. And through the emergency management plan, through improved bylaws, we're more efficient with our staff in the delivery of service. So all of that boiling down to the three-word pledge for the flood mitigation program, and that is to leverage opportunities, integrate what we learn, and create into the fabric and DNA of the town of Drumheller, and leave legacy where we can. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Palmier from O2 Design, and have him make a few opening comments on what's been a very accelerated time frame, and in a time of challenge, but probably a leading edge product has been produced that is probably unparalleled, but will be followed throughout the country. Andrew.
Great. Oh, I don't think that's going to move. Okay, we'll move. All right, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here today and to walk you through, at a very high level, the draft of the new municipal development plan and the land use bylaw. I've promised myself that I won't go on too long, and I'm looking forward to the actual dialogue we get to have in about 6 weeks' time or so to really kind of get into some of the details and some of the nuances. But today was just sort of an intro presentation for everybody who is listening, and really it's probably one of the most interesting projects that as a firm we've had the pleasure of being involved in. And it is this whole idea of changing the channel on flooding and putting the river first. And it's truly a transformative project for us, and I think for the town of Drumheller as well. And our work right now is, and what I'm talking to you about today is the municipal development plan and the land use bylaw, but we're also involved in the downtown plan too. So we're involved at the first level of planning, the municipal development plan, that overarching vision, and then we have the opportunity to really position the downtown within that context, and then get into the implementation mechanisms. And from a planning perspective, the primary implementation mechanism is always the land use bylaw itself. And, you know, putting the river at the heart of planning was the absolute central starting point to this project. I won't necessarily go into all of these components in detail today, but really this was the most transformative and important component of how we approached all of our work. And it was thinking about adaptive protection mechanisms, conveyance capacities, knowing your flow and understanding, where there are houses that are potentially in conflict, looking at an alignment analysis, and then creating at a high level protected areas and growth areas, and really thinking about that conveyance zone as an opportunity at that point. And this translated into everything we did, from delineating growth areas in the MDP to creating overlay zones within the land use bylaw itself. This was the most fundamental component of how we started to approach the 20-year vision and the zoning bylaw as for Drumheller, which is really about putting the river at the heart of planning. The municipal development plan itself, it's an exciting document. It's an accessible document, and it's really about creating a central vision and new goals and objectives for the town itself that really looks at these key forces that shape it. The river, the Badlands, the unique and amazing neighborhoods that are here, and the opportunities for growth and change. Flood mitigation infrastructure, that supports a comprehensive open space and trail network, that connects the entire valley. That's an essential component of this MDP. It's going beyond just that traditional approach of, you create berms or you create infrastructure, but you look at them and leverage them as an incredible opportunity as well. And that's what's at front and center of this plan. And it's a real incredible opportunity to make something that goes from Nakmine to East Cooley. looking at future growth areas that respond to the river and identifying those areas for potential growth and change to grow safely, to grow smartly, and to create sustainable and complete neighborhoods, that offer a diverse mix of uses and housing types, and to really start to think about the transportation hierarchy within the valley and within the town as sort of a prioritization of active modes and pedestrians, and something that really contributes to that valley experience. Is sort of front and center here within the MDP. And that new vision that we've created and drafted really is about creating a place to grow and a place to discover. As it relates to a place to grow, it's that investment is drawn to the valley, that new residents and enterprise want to be here, that there's purposeful flood protection systems, that there's a renewed focus on the river as an amenity and unlocking it as a recreation opportunity as well, and that we're creating a range of choice and opportunity. And then as a place to discover, Drumheller is just absolutely blessed. It's one of the most amazing places in the country. And, the dramatic river landscapes, the deep history, whether it's geologic or it's First Nation and Indigenous communities, or it's coal mining and settlement patterns. It's an amazing layered landscape, and it's an unmissable part of the Alberta experience. And the plan fully embraces and acknowledges that, and then it creates that the plan itself wants to unlock this idea of what we were calling unscripted adventure, and creating sort of a regional network that responds to it, and really get an immersive Badland experience, a place to explore, to exercise, to play, to shop and relax. And that's sort of front and center, even in the zoning bylaw and the categories that we created here. It's taking this vision and translating it down. There's six overarching key goals to the draft municipal development plan, which we have here as an adaptive flood mitigation strategy, starting with the river, moving to the open space, the trails and open space systems, the badlands themselves, moving towards complete and sustainable communities, recognizing and celebrating the unique neighborhoods that are Drumheller right now. Like I said, talking about valley-wide transportation as well. And then acknowledging a diverse, robust, and economy, and expanding on emerging sectors, thinking about where Drumheller could emerge with, whether it's fiber optic or ecotourism, really starting to think and contemplate some of the opportunities that Drumheller has. In terms of an adaptive flood barrier mitigation strategy, really starting to think about how we divide or think about a conveyance zone for the river to sort of naturally ebb and flow as it needs to, protected zones, growth zones that are up and above the badlands themselves, and really start to ensure that growth is resilient and growth is thoughtful and growth is well placed and situated. The MDP itself, as you get into the document, it obviously has a land use concept, and what we did here just quickly is dropped it into a 3D model just to kind of give you a sense of how it's sort of laying itself out, but it's a very simple, accessible land use concept that talks about the downtown and reaffirms it as sort of the civic heart of Drumheller. It talks about commercial and industrial opportunities, acknowledges these great neighborhoods. It thinks about rural development as well, and then of course that immersive open space system. There are growth areas identified within the municipal development plan as well, smartly located growth areas that promote opportunities above sort of any, about the 2100 CMS zone, to really think about areas where we can grow in an intelligent and smart way that's up and away from the river. And it acknowledges that some of these areas are sort of different levels of priority based on whether there's servicing in place, accessibility, closeness to existing neighborhoods. But again, it's the municipal development plan really anticipating and encouraging growth in safe locations. The Badlands River Park Trail System, front and center in the plan. It's really about establishing a trail hierarchy of the river, the System 2100, the local trails and loops and adventure trails. It's thinking about creating a network of pavilions and plazas and key destination spaces and trail intersections that really provide this incredible amenity for residents. It talking about at a high level developing new river access points as well, and about linking stories through those open space networks and curating the valley experience. You know, whether it's acknowledging some of the mining landscapes or the geologic landscapes or whatever it may be, we've been working with the technical advisory committee to really think about what that experience can look like in that sort of idea of creating those bringing those stories to front and center, and about protecting natural areas and sensitive lands as well. And this is sort of the high-level concept that you'll see within the municipal development plan right now too, sort of linking an open space concept and a trails concept and this great experience from the Tyrrell Museum in Knackmine all the way down to the Atlas coal mine itself, and thinking about those movement of space through there. In addition to this, you know, the MDP reinforces the Drumheller's downtown as this fantastic opportunity to, you know, support public life and events, to create economic development incentives, and to really think about, you know, it being that sort of civic heart. And it links itself into that downtown area redevelopment plan that is in process here, but the downtown is acknowledged in the MDP, and it provides that direction and it acknowledges that direction of the downtown as being important as well. With regard to the land use bylaw itself, you know, there was a lot of change in this document. If you look at the existing adopted bylaw versus the proposed one today, one of the things that will jump out at you right away is we're dropping from 21 to 8 districts. It's about an approachable, modernized, and business-friendly bylaw. It's about looking at increasing the number of permitted uses and reducing the number of discretionary uses to reduce the number of applications that need to go to Municipal Planning Commission, to create that certainty for the community and for investment opportunity within Drumheller itself. You know, it's that shift, that important shift about moving away from a fixation on use and really to think about form and allowing a greater mix of uses throughout the valley. It establishes, importantly, a flood hazard overlay within it to ensure safe, sustainable, and responsible growth and development. It has a development opportunity overlay within it as well, to look at these growth areas that I showed you within the draft municipal development plan, to acknowledge those areas and to put rules in them for around in-term uses, and to think about what the opportunities are to unlock that potential. It protects the Badlands. It actually creates a Badlands district that acknowledges their scenic and environmental value, their tourism value. They have an incredible economic value to them, and this plan puts that front and center as well. And it makes bold moves that other municipalities have started to explore and to do. And one of them, for instance, is removing parking minimums to allow a market-based approach towards sustainable planning, rather than approach that has, you know, not really served, I would say, municipalities across North America particularly well, of forcing minimums, to be more flexible and to allow that to occur and to happen. So the bylaw itself really starts to think about, you know, what I would consider or position as sort of a transective experience from, you know, the Badlands districts, which you can see in the image here, moving to a rural development district, to a countryside, all the way down into the downtown. It acknowledges the tourism corridors, you know, so that initial approaches in some of the hotels and some of the hospitality stuff that supports it as well, and then acknowledges the employment areas of Drumheller too. So it's a greatly simplified document. I think it will serve the community, if council wishes it to, serve the community quite well, and it really starts to put front and center the river, the Badlands, the assets of the community, and really is going to create, I think, a strong vision that invites investment and a better process that equals less time and less energy in both behalf of administration, but also for applicants as well. So that was a whirlwind overview of the plans themselves. I could go into them in much more detail, but you know, really what we're looking to do, as I've said over and over again, is place the river at the heart of key planning documents to sort of leverage new and reduce the friction to leverage new investment, to connect the valley, to set the stage for that unscripted, incredible adventure that Drumheller has to offer, and you know, to make sure that the downtown is the start of that story, the base camp for the valley, and really to enhance and protect the valley's unique neighborhoods, and to really give a document that the residents of Drumheller can rally around and push us forward for the next 20 plus years. Thank you.
Fantastic, Andrew. Just a great overview and an exciting project. At the top of this particular slide is the 4 areas of the Bill 8, the people, property, environment, and the economy, and improving safety for the residents, but also unlocking. We use that word over and over again, or reintroducing everybody to the river. We've done a heck of a job of hiding it for quite some time, and now it's time to open it up. The properties, making existing development safer, making future development smarter, but also protecting the value of existing is just extremely important to this process. And it affects entire neighborhoods, not simply those that are along the river, but in entire areas that are in the floodplain. Environment, make room for the river, foster sustainable neighborhoods. Communities is written in there, but we refer to them as neighborhoods. The economy, strong vision and invites the investment. A better process is easier to articulate, which we hope means increased investment. So we've really tried to change the channel on the governing side of things from being very prescriptive to being more descriptive and saying this is what we want to try and be, and then letting industry, the public, and commerce take care of the rest. So with that, I'm going to ask that Daryl provide any further comment and or instruction on it. He was, of course, very much part of the technical and steering committee that worked on this, and tremendous amount of effort in a short period of time. Daryl, please.
Thanks, Darwin. So and Andrew, great presentation, and you could have taken more time if you wanted to, so that's fine. I always keep these guys on schedule here. Great overview of this. This is a really comprehensive document. Both the municipal development plan and the land use bylaw are not things that you change just on a dime. Our current ones are 12 years old, respectively. And they are, and this is groundbreaking. I mean, really, we have done a great job, and the team needs to be commended for the work that they've done, especially in a short period of time. That being said, so what we're looking for is council to have first reading tonight, and then there's an extensive public consultation and communication plan that's being planned before our second reading, which is we're proposing to have it scheduled for 6 weeks from tonight on October 26th. So what we there's opportunity to go out to meet with special interest groups, meet with the public at large, and really try to give people a good information on how to deal with these changes, which we think are really quite descriptive as opposed to prescriptive, as Darwin noted earlier. So I think in normal cases, we just do first reading and we don't have any discussion. But I think before we go to that, if council has any discussion or questions, I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of go forward and ask this, just knowing that this is such a significant event for Drumheller. So.
All right, does anybody have anything that they want to say before because this is typically not the way.
And we're doing it because we also have there's a report that is complementary to it. So we're saying it's because of the report that we're going to do that before we actually do first reading. So basically just on the presentation.
Okay, so has anybody got any questions, Lisa?
Or some comments, I guess. I really think that going forward with a lot of the communication that we're going to have with the community in regards to this, it seems to be a really hot button issue in regards to the trail system. So I would like to ensure that we come prepared to have those in-depth discussions as to how this might affect my community going forward. I've heard good comments on it, and I've heard a bunch of negative. So just throwing that out there. I also really like I'm going to deem it the Hill Hugger District. So I'm just kind of curious how that would fit in with some of the provincial requirements in regards to the paleontological studies that have to be done. So don't need to comment on it now. If you can just provide me some information, I'm just curious on that. As a former business owner downtown and being on council now for almost 11 years, I just want to say that it's always been a sticking point where people are trying to develop businesses downtown, and yet they have to purchase a parking stall. So I am so glad to see that this requirement possibly being removed to allow proper development of our downtown. Absolutely awesome. So, and the fact that it's a nice shift to what is our real reality, being the main peril of our community being flood. It's nice that we're focusing on that to address that for our future generations. So thank you.
Anybody else? Tom?
Yeah, I applaud the incredible efforts of everyone involved in this. It's a huge task, and it was done relatively quickly. So O2, you're to be commended for all your great work, and Darwin and Daryl and everybody involved. It's very, very impressive. This is a, and pardon the pun, a landmark document. That to put the river first is an incredible insight. I know as the chair of the Municipal Planning Commission, we have been frustrated to no end over the last few years in having to disallow some developments and also to allow some developments that we're thinking, this is right along the river. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. So both the municipal development plan and the land use bylaw are intended to help this community go forward and not be at the peril and of the river every springtime. That this might take a number of years. I mean, that to change the 100 years of development along the river that we've had is not going to change overnight. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take some patience. But these two documents are certainly a step in the right direction.
Anybody else? Jay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to pass along my congratulations for what is, generally speaking, when it comes to municipal development plans and land use bylaws, we're not talking about the sexy, exciting side of municipal operations. But in particular, this document is actually exciting. For someone like me who has no background in zoning, who's never sat or served on a municipal development commission, the document itself, I think, threads the needle about being so proactive about a potentially wonderful future to facilitate the right kinds of development, to get out of the way of the right kind of development, and to do things. Well, frankly, I hope in this unparalleled, I've certainly never seen it in my time, amount of public information and consultation that's about to begin. I hope the overwhelming reaction from the community is, well, it's about time. Putting the river first in your planning documents, how can that possibly be novel? Well, it is. So we're just closing the chapter on not doing the right things and deciding we're only doing the right things moving forward. And so I look forward to all of those things. I was getting ready to say that, just for the listening public, that don't think the council doesn't have a lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of areas for clarification. It's just that this council's process for a number of years has been to pass first readings without discussion or debate, so that we don't curtail the public consultation and information phase by framing it unnecessarily within what we're worried about, instead leaving it wide open to the community to tell us their thoughts. So of course that's still going to happen, but given the opportunity to say that I thought the document itself was respectful to the past, but with a absolutely keen, focused eye on how the future needs to be for the true longevity of this community. I think it's a fantastic draft, and I can't imagine any wholesale changes going forward. There'll be fine tuning along the way, but if somebody comes along with a better mousetrap that hasn't been thought of in this document, I'll be staggered.
Thank you. And I'd like just to note, there is some confusion on the 21 to 8. Some people are perceiving that we're trying to rush something. So I want you to, when we do the, open and public hearings, just clarify this is absolutely about making it easier to do business in town rather than more difficult. So that's the main reason that we did this. Oh, Christine, do you want something? Go ahead.
Yeah, it was just quick. In regard to what Jay said about this being a sexy process, I personally do find it a sexy process, mainly because I come from the design world where planning equals a great design. And so by having this vision of what we want the community to look like, planning for it.
It's no sewers, Christine. Come
Well,
on.
it's going to be so fun to see this go from the planning stage to the actual built stage. And yeah, it's kind of sexy. Thanks.
All right, can I get a motion on the floor, please? Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Council, 1, give first reading to bylaw 17.20, a bylaw to adopt a municipal development plan, and 2, schedule a public hearing on proposed bylaw 17.20 on October 26th.
Seconder, Christine, all in favor? Carried. And do you want to carry on, Jay, with the next bylaw for land use bylaw, please, or the next motion? It's right here.
Can I take it from here, or is there another? It's the same? Okay, good. Yes, I will, Your Worship. So I move that Council give first reading to bylaw 16.20, the Town of Drumheller land use bylaw, and schedule a public hearing on proposed bylaw 16.20 again for October 26th.
Thank you. Seconder, Tom, all in favor? Carried. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming and giving us all that information, and we look forward to hearing what the community has to say and getting this going. And somebody said it was, I think you guys have set an unprecedented document that's got everything it is in it, but the least amount of pages. Is that right?
Your Worship, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we didn't talk about red tape reduction, and certainly the 21 down to 8 is part of that, but also we're under 100 pages for the land use bylaw, which is absolutely unheard of. So yeah, some pretty neat milestones, both technically and arithmetically and vision-wise. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for taking the time, and look forward to seeing you here soon. All right, safe travels back. Okay, Darwin, do you need a minute to go on to 5.2.1, update on flood mitigation?
No, Daryl, nothing else to do on the bylaws, correct? Yep, okay. So again, not to be too brief, but not to take up a bunch of time either. Just an overall view of the flood mitigation program as it moves forward. Last week we had a meeting with 7 of our consulting firms in Calgary, just for efficiency and the ability for them to bring their senior principals together. O2 hosted the day and gave some overview to, again, our original design, so our original planning, so that we can get to the design phase. I've been in contact with many of them over the weekend. And this week we have some of them in town updating field work so that we can really start to move forward on the design. With that, we're contacting landowners to gain permission to enter their lands so that we can do some of the preliminary information gathering on everything from the style and type of fixtures that are in their backyards through to some of the soils conditions and environmental aspects of the backyards. And that will continue throughout the valley over the next 3 weeks. Scotland and Lease, again, Scotland and Lease will be contacting many of the people that live riverside and be able to get permissions from them. In some circumstances where we're very close to properties, even though the vast majority of people don't own to the river edge, we're still letting them know neighborhood by neighborhood of the work that we're planning to undertake. We will see a lot of brushing and mowing happening on outfalls on existing dikes throughout the valley, and crews are out today continuing with inspection work, and in some cases they have to mow the tops very short so that we can assess what the tops of some of the dikes look like, some of the storm sewers. And while we're at it, with the principle of leverage, integrate, and legacy, we're making certain that we clean things up so they're ready for the spring when we have the ice jams and other things that we can't work and on the frozen outfalls, so we make certain that they're clean here in the fall. Property acquisitions, we continue to work on those. Have 8 properties have accepted. We have one group that's, one property that's looking at the expropriation option. That's been parked for the time being. We've got additional offers that will go out this week on some parcels, while others are being assessed, and 2 have been withdrawn as there's no deal to be made. Access agreements, 56 of them have been sought, 17 as of Friday were executed. There's a great number, well, not a great number, probably about 15 that we'll pick up tomorrow based on the indications from last week, and we've had 3 that have just out and out declined. We've done some work with the insurance and banking industry, and have talked to our contacts and advisors in Toronto on Bay Street, and we'll be trying to work through a bit of a write-up that will be fit into the campaign going forward. I think it's extremely important for people to understand that whether it's on the old mapping or the new mapping, we are trying to create protected zones for the entire neighborhoods. And it isn't necessarily just the homes along the river that protect the neighborhood. The diking that has to go between the river and the housing is what will afford that protection to the entire area, including the sanitary sewer system that often is overwhelmed and backs up in flood times. So it's going to take a whole of neighborhood or a whole of community effort. You're going to see that pointed out quite directly in the communications that we're going to be talking about going forward, and hopefully be in a position to create our land assembly so that we can begin construction of a lot of these dikes early in next year or into the fall, depending on what kind of a spring we have. So lots of communication based on council's election to pass first reading of the bylaw. We'll see considerable information in several medium, including the Drumheller Mail, including some of the social media, and on the radio. And we will continue to do that on through to the 26th, when the public hearing will be held here at Council Chamber. We also have several projects that we will start implementing in the field, and they range from cleaning out and renewing the capacity of the storm detention ponds in South Huntington, pruning the roots on several of the trees at the tree farm, removing trees in some areas that are just too dangerous to have those trees, cleaning up some storm outfalls, and building some very minor diking that is problematic in each and every spring to move forward. We'll also work on putting together a dossier of environmental approvals. There's a myriad of them, probably no less than 12 different areas that we have to assemble and do analysis on to get that work done, and it ranges, as I affectionately call it, from bugs and bunnies on through to the flora and fauna and the rare plant species at risk, etc. To that end, we have 6 students that have joined us, or interns, under the auspices of the Canadian Federation of Wildlife, under the Canadian Conservation Corps. Stan Solberg did an amazing job of putting that together and getting donated accommodations and other things, meals for these students. So it was just a real gift for us, and thank you, Stan. And thanks to the students. We're going to be introducing them to some of the professionals that will be doing some of the work on the conservation measures and other adaptation strategies we have. So they'll be able to learn a bit as we go. We'll be clearing off some of the rail embankment between Rosedale and the Hoodoos area, putting up some temporary signage so that people know where they are on the trail if they choose to use it between now and next year when we do more efforts. The main purpose of doing the clearing right now is so that we can get in, and just like we're going into the backyards of those that have consented, we'll be going into those town-owned lands to identify flora and fauna, and also do geotechnical drilling for our system 2100. So we'll see that happen very soon. There'll be a lot of project signs go up over the next 2 to 3 weeks that are going to identify these different areas that we're working on. We've got considerable early works to do down in the Centennial Park area that we'll want to get in before the frost sets in, and we have a few things to review with ATCO so that they, under their franchise agreement, can get some of their physical plant moved within the next 2 years. That's my report and update, unless there's questions, Your Worship.
All right, thanks, Darwin. Questions? Lisa?
Just got a quick one. In regards to those access agreements, how will that hold up the progress of the project if you can't get that access?
It could be considerable.
So in the areas, it used to be my understanding that a certain frontage of the river belonged to the federal government, Federal Fisheries Ministry. So is that the same in Drumheller? Like it was in East Cooley, we had an issue where somebody had actually manicured all the way down to the river, and then they were finally told the first 60 feet belonged to the federal government. So this being the case, is that for most of the homeowners? Like, did everybody just assume that they own to the river?
No. Very few people actually own to the bed and shore of the river. And the bed and shore, many different descriptions of what that means, and many, many, many fables and urban legends of what that means. The area that is denuded of vegetation because of ice and or water flow is generally what's described as the bed and shore of a water body, but it can extend beyond that. Only a Canada or an Alberta land surveyor can determine where that is, and that can only be changed, that person's opinion can only be changed in court by a judge. In the majority of cases in Drumheller, the parcels are described either by a registered plan or by a descriptive title that either shows that they own to the water's edge or the bed and shore, or it stops some distance before, and that can range from 300 feet to 20 feet to the 60 feet that you've advised or used in your example. So there's no hard and fast rule. It is something that we've had 2 survey firms, Hunter Wallace and Vector Surveys, probably 2 months now, identifying rights-of-way, property pins, and survey information so that we can do those determinations and then be in a position to make absolute offers if we have to assemble the lands. And in some cases, we just simply need an easement on property for us to preserve it as flood attenuation. But back to your original point of how much will it hold up if permissions aren't given, yeah, it's going to be tough to work around, and holds up the protection system for the entire neighborhood.
Thanks, Darwin.
Tom?
Yeah, just one question. I've had people ask me, why aren't we building dikes right now? And one of the things that I've told them is, there are environmental laws and rules as to when you can and when you can't work on the river. Could you just explain that very briefly?
Certainly, there's basically, we call it the fish window, and that is when the fish are not spawning. It's clear to make some minor disruption in the stream, and then we don't cover up the eggs that are being laid. So that's generally a period that for in-stream works. As a practical matter, we usually need ice, so it's really about January till February is about the only chance that we get, although the fish window's a little wider than that. There's also assessments that have to be done of the rare plants, species at risk, and migratory birds. There's quite a list that have to be looked at and put in place. And above all that, we know that the province of Alberta and Canada have created or are in the process of creating new flow maps. And it'd be folly for us to go ahead and start designing before we have those, given that they may change. Velocity being probably the chief thing there, not necessarily flow. So trust that answers the question.
Anybody else? Could you I want to just clarify. I think this has some confusion on, we literally just signed the agreement with the federal government on July 1st, correct? So I think that's the thing that people have to understand is we didn't have the actual money for all of this. So we just got it July 1st. We just approved the engineers 2 weeks ago today. So I think that, if that helps a bit. I just want to clear up, you said Riverside, you mean on the riverside, not the, I just don't want all of Riverside saying
Yeah, there's several riversides in Drumheller, so
let's
yes,
just
of course,
be
Your
on
Worship.
the riverside.
In the
And-
conveyance channel.
All right, perfect. And this has come up, and people have said, well, when are they coming to my neighborhood? When are they coming to my neighborhood? So you guys are continually giving communication as to when you will be approaching neighborhoods. Okay, so just so people continue to watch Drumheller Alert, the website, okay, and we'll be doing videos. And yes, I give a shout out to Stan on Silberg on all that effort, because I know he was very, 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 very persuasive about getting that done. So thank you, Stan. And if nobody else has anything else, thank you for continuing to update, and we'll get you back every week and keep doing this and keep people informed as we can.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Darwin. Okay, let's move on to 5.3.1, and Darren is going to give a presentation.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council. So presentation, maybe not so much, but before you is a request for decision, and it's actually a revised request for decision, because if you recall back in May, there was a request for decision for the abatement of fees for restructuring of the Junior A Hockey Club fees. That came along with a presentation from the Dragons Hockey Club, as well as support from our economic development manager at that time. And they spoke to their operations, fundraising, and the economic impact that they have to our community. So when the original request for decision was prepared and presented, unfortunately, all the direct financial reports were not reviewed at that time. And so the maximums that are in the abatement and the reductions were incorrect. So in this request for decision, you'll see that I've provided the last 3 season ice rentals with approximate values there. For 2019 and 20, the rates were a little bit lower that year, and also, as we know, COVID hit and it wasn't a full season. 2018-19, 2017 and 18 are all provided there for you. So in the following information there, you can see that the abatements have been adjusted for what was approved to what the maximum would be, using $50,000 per season as the figure. Over the 4 years, it would be a total amount of $125,000. So the recommendation that is before you is that council approve the following revised abatement using the $50,000 for each of the upcoming years. So in the first year of 2021 hockey season, the maximum would be $50,000, followed by in the 2021 and 2022 hockey season, a 75% reduction that would equate to a maximum of $37,500. The 2022-2023 hockey season there would be a 50% reduction of the fees to a maximum of $25,000. 2023-2024 hockey season would be a 25% reduction to a maximum of $12,500. And then the full fees would be implemented for the 2024-2025 hockey season and no reduction. So there is a difference there from the original request for decision of approximately $125,000 total, which is an additional $58,700 over the original amount. I'd be open to any questions.
Do I get a motion, Tom?
Yeah, I move that council approve the revised abatement and fee structure for the Drumheller Dragons Junior A Hockey Club 2020 and 2021 to 2023-2024 hockey seasons as presented.
Seconder, Lisa, comments? Lisa?
I guess just for clarification, so the additional is actually an up to. Correct?
Up
Okay.
to, yes.
All right,
So it's
so-
a maximum amount.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Tom?
So just looking at the $50,000, is not the Dragons fees tied in with minor hockey as well? And what if the town decides to change that amount sometime in the next couple of years? So I guess I'm looking at, I mean, we can set this for the next 4 years, no problem. But what if the full fees for 2024, 2025 are $60,000? Is that what we're expecting, or how would that work?
So currently under what is recommended, and this was based on the previous request for decision as well, is that it was to a maximum amount. So if ice fee rates increase over the next few years in any substantial amount, the request for decision would sit at a maximum dollar figure that they would be eligible for.
But the 2024, 2025 season could be more than 50,000.
Could be, correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? Jay?
Just to clarify, Darren, there's no change in the recommendation. Administration is not changing their position, that this is the right thing to do, given the circumstance, correct?
That is correct.
And if it weren't for erroneous data, and council is quite accustomed to making decisions based on the information presented at the time, imperfect as it may be, but if it weren't for the erroneous caps, we wouldn't be revisiting this, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, I have no questions.
Anybody else? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Oops, sorry. Okay, so just for the listing public now, we have to go into flood mitigation disclosure harmful to business interest of a third party. So can I get a motion to go in camera? Lisa, Christine, all in favor? And this is our final discussion for the day, so we will not be coming back. So thank you so much.